If you're a non-EU or EEA EFTA national from Australia, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, Singapore, South Korea or USA, you may be able to use the eGates to enter the UK. If you're from a different non-EU or EEA EFTA country, or you encountered an issue using the eGates and are referred to a Border Force officer, then please continue to watch this video. When you arrive at the Border Force desk, you will be requested to hand your passport to the Border Force officer. If you have EUSS status or a valid EUSS pending application, the Border Force officer will scan your passport to verify this. To avoid delays, your passport must be linked to your EUSS status or pending application via your UKVI account. Information on how to update your UKVI account details and the identity document connected to your account is available on gov.uk. As a joining family member with a valid pending EUSS application, it is recommended that you arrive with entry clearance unless you have an in-date or expired EUSS family permit. If you have an EUSS family permit, the Border Force officer will check the vignette in your passport. The vignette is a physical visa that is added to your passport after being granted an EUSS family permit. Once the Border Force officer has verified your EUSS family permit, EUSS status or valid pending EUSS application, your passport will be returned to you and you will be granted entry to the UK. If the Border Force officer is able to verify that you have EUSS status right away, while scanning your passport, you are not required to provide your biometric residence card. There may be circumstances where further checks are required. In this case, another Border Force officer will take your passport to perform further checks. During this time, you may be asked to wait at the Border Force desk. Alternatively, you could be handed a pre-filled form titled IS-81 form and asked to wait in the controlled waiting area whilst the checks take place. It is worth noting here that despite the pre-filled form referring to detainment whilst further inquiries are undertaken, you may only be in this area for a short period of time and could still gain entry to the UK once further checks have been completed. Once the Border Force officer is able to verify that you have EUSS status, a valid pending application or an EUSS family permit, your passport will be returned to you and you will be granted entry to the UK. This process can take on average between 10 to 30 minutes, but it may take longer in some exceptional circumstances. If the Border Force officer is unable to make a decision, then it will be escalated to a caseworker located within the airport. If you haven't already been given a pre-filled IS-81 form and asked to take a seat in the controlled waiting area, the Border Force officer will now provide you with this and ask you to do so. Whilst in the waiting area, you may be asked for some follow-up questions as well as for documentation, physical or digital, so that the caseworker can understand your case fully. There is no average time frame for this particular process, but in exceptional circumstances you could be waiting for over an hour. Once the caseworker is satisfied with the additional information and/or documents, you'll be escorted from the waiting area to gain entry to the UK. It is possible that you may have your passport stamped by a Border Force officer to grant you temporary entry to the UK. The stamp may state that you can only enter the UK for 3 to 6 months and that you are unable to work during that time. However, if you are able to prove your EUSS status or certificate of application whilst in the UK, this will supersede the stamp in your passport. If the caseworker is unable to make a decision after obtaining additional information from you, then you could be escorted to one of the interview rooms. Here, a Border Force officer will ask you a series of detailed questions. A translation service can be provided if needed. There is no average time frame for how long this particular interview process can take. If the Border Force officer is satisfied with the information obtained during the interview process, your passport will be returned to you and you'll be granted entry to the UK. However, if after all further examination there is still not enough evidence to prove your right to enter, you will be refused entry to the UK. In this situation, you will be removed from the UK. If you have experienced issues at the border that you feel that a Border Force officer has not followed the processes outlined in this video, then please visit the IMA website, where you can report a complaint via our portal, send a complaint via post, or contact us via telephone.